Welcome back from chapter 8 and the continuation of our story of the discovery of the world's only significant provenance Knights Templar artefacts. Two bells taken from a 12th century Templar presbytery here in Dumfriesshire. Sponsored by a master of Templars from the first Templar family of Scotland, the Leriche, and our frustrating struggle to have the discovery recognised by the heritage establishment. In the last two videos, we shared our conflict with the Scottish Government's lead heritage agency, Historic Environment Scotland, a major player in our dispute with the Scottish heritage establishment. We discussed the agency's unashamed avoidance of the discovery of Knights Templar bells here at Holywood, a discovery the agency does not refute, a discovery the agency has evaluated and failed to discredit. A discovery supported by a comprehensive archaeological report that has received no competent challenge from even the most referred history academics. There is no supportable argument levied against our findings. No doubt has been raised to test our discovery. The find is authentic. Yet the discovery has been met with deceit and prejudice, all because the agency, like the heritage sector as a whole, is filled with academically conditioned players who do not like the finders or any merited challenge presented by members of the public against the blatant deficiencies of historical understanding formed over 100 years ago as Victorians embraced a popular consideration of history and in the process corrupted a great deal of it. The agency certainly illustrates a public heritage sector which presents only a superficial nod to public inclusion into our shared heritage, which has resulted in what we see today in Scotland. Heritage rotting in state care and derelict heritage lining Scottish streets, all within an environment of public indifference. Here at Holywood, the agency's willful and petty refusal to engage with the archaeological evidence of the site, or properly amend the historic property listing of the church and the bells, does nothing to secure the future of this 18th century church, or its surrounding historic graveyard, the 900-year-old burial ground and memorial to Scotland's brave heroes and warriors. Instead, the agency would condemn the site's future to share the same disuse, rot and neglect as seen in hundreds of historic structures all over Scotland, and in particular here in Dumfriesshire. However, Holywood's future would be secure with simply the objective consideration of our research by those who have a paid responsibility to ensure the public's understanding of history is constantly improved and Scottish heritage is actually sustainable. But Historic Environment Scotland refuses to carry out any action that would authenticate the discovery, despite the discovery illustrating the difference between competent understanding and superficial subjective opinion fostered by academia, which has also resulted in a great deal of our history being misrepresented through a lack of competent audit. The understanding of the bells we present is a world apart from the record that formed the conservation proposal for this church. And all those in the establishment who have received our report knows it, yet does nothing. That is how bad our heritage establishment has become in the third millennia. It is filled with spineless, witless players, actors who pretend to care about heritage and history, but do not. Does Historic Environment Scotland think Digger and I and the discovery of the world's only significant provenance Knights Templar artefacts will disappear because the agency chooses to bury its head in the sand? It seems the agency would rather see the site signpost the agency's incompetence and indifference and promote Scotland as a country that does not care for its history. Holywood should be a tourist attraction, but instead it will be a billboard advertising just how delinquent Scotland has allowed itself to become. Digger and I do not question the importance of the role given to Historic Environment Scotland, but the reality is the agency, certainly in the case of the Holywood site and the Knights Templar Bells of Scotland, offers no value in terms of heritage understanding, promotion and care, the very reason the agency was created. Regardless of the agency's bureaucratic excuses why it will not engage with the discovery, it will always come down to a fundamental question. Has evidence been provided that the bells of Holywood were cast on the instruction of a Knights Templar master of Scotland in the 12th century? Because such an understanding is huge in terms of Scottish medieval history. Such an understanding would fundamentally change how the public view the site of Holywood, producing increased tourist income and traffic to the site. Such an understanding would be of great interest to thousands, if not millions of people all over the world, those that passionately follow Templar and Scottish medieval history. Such an understanding would bring a spotlight onto Scotland. So the matter deserved prudent consideration by the agency. Only a fool would declare otherwise. So have Historic Environment Scotland prudently considered this extraordinary discovery and discounted their support because the evidence for the bell's extraordinary Knights Templar provenance is absent? Or have they discounted it because the research is not from an acceptable source? Well, not acceptable to the agency, that is. It is certainly the latter. The agency has deliberately chosen to ignore the discovery because it does not like the finders, presenting great harm and deprivation to the discovery and to Scotland's reputation and the finders in the process. Harm that is manifest in that Digger and I are currently threatened with fines and imprisonment because discovering their extraordinary and priceless provenance, we have chosen to remove these extraordinary bells temporarily into a safe, secure environment while we sought new keepers for the church and bells, all while the property was dilapidated, requiring millions of pounds in refurbishment, and while we struggled without any support whatsoever from the Scottish heritage, legal and institutional church establishment or from the local community to achieve authentication for the history of the site, known to the community in the 18th century but lost in the 20th within a tide of public indifference, and represented with unassailable evidence in 2021. I hope once you read our archaeological report you see the merit and the fact there is no technical argument or ambiguity to present any other conclusion than what we present. After 5 years of auditing the heritage sector and academic response to our discovery, Historic Environment Scotland's attitude is not surprising, because its lead managers are a product of a bigoted academic philosophy, compliant to dogma rather than prudent challenge or professional behaviour. Public sector managers adhering to current historical understanding, where fact and truth have knowingly been misplaced. Public sector managers born from an academic discipline where challenge, professionality, proficiency and performance have been replaced with compliance, mediocrity and delinquency, as exhibited in the spineless and avoidant behaviours of the professional, academic-tuned historians that we have encountered so far. And of course, when such malignant human traits prevail, there is always resistance to challenge and merit when it is presented. Before I continue, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Support our cause through signing our petition and buying our book. Sign up through the website. It is important you do so. We have sacrificed a great deal to keep these very important bells and sites safe, and we have done so far without material support. We are impoverished, fighting to protect history from a Scottish establishment and a local public environment that does not care. This injustice will only be resolved with a global public intervention, with the internet filled with stories and debate, a spotlight brought to bear on a heritage sector that has escaped public scrutiny, using the extraordinary discovery of Knights Templar bells as another graphic illustration of institutional malignancy in the third millennium. We have a report on our early interactions with Historic Environment Scotland on our website. It is titled Historic Environment Scotland, a Malignant Caretaker. The report allowed us to record our interactions with the agency. There is a second report not yet completed at the time this video was made, because the matter between our local Member of Parliament and the Scottish Government is not yet concluded. But with every piece of correspondence from Historic Environment Scotland, every new piece of insider information we receive and pursue, with every new excuse offered by the agency in its attempt to argue around the agency's refusal to help us mentor the discovery of the world's only provenance Knights Templar artifacts, the agency reveals the very dishonesty it refutes and builds a case against it. What is clear in the communications between my wife and I and the agency is a plea for help on one side for the benefit of heritage and rebuttal on the other, purely to safeguard bureaucratic and academic control. One side has merit, the other malignancy. Read the evidence on our website and judge for yourself which is which. Let's be realistic. In a world of public sector failure, should we expect merit, public benefit, sound performance and objectivity somehow to buck the negative trend with Scottish heritage governance, particularly in a sector with a lack of vociferous public and political scrutiny? Or should we expect the heritage sector to be filled with the same deadwood, legions of unnecessary managers and process sludge, all bloating the system with needless bureaucracy, data management, endless talk, no positive outcomes, inefficiency and a general corruption of merit, all within the control of managers with a truancy of critical or predictive intelligence? Visit Historic Environment Scotland's website and read the rhetoric, the bombast that populates most websites advertising the public and heritage sector. You'll read published intent that rarely matches the reality of the heart of the bureaucratic monster. Mission statements made with good purpose that quickly become hollow rhetoric, gloss covering a rotten foundation. The public heritage sector, exemplified by Historic Environment Scotland, exists more for self-employment and self-service of its participants, rather than the selfless, passionate delivery of heritage celebration, care and sustainability. I would love to hear from someone who has a positive view of the agency. I really would. I could have saved you the time taken to view the last two videos and simply refer you to the internet and the press stories ongoing from 2025 regarding Historic Environment Scotland as a troubled, grossly mismanaged and incompetent heritage agency. Reports and evidence paint a picture of an inappropriate management behaviour, absent governance, financial mismanagement and a toxic workplace culture, corruption, accusations of racism, the catastrophic failure to maintain the properties in its charge, with a huge repairs and maintenance budget deficit, all through decades of mismanagement. It includes the failure to keep a track of the condition of heritage in Scotland and those properties at risk, a failure to audit the historical record in its keeping, or maintain and build a comprehensive database and archive of historical understanding. The systemic denigration of the talent existing within the agency, and so on, and so on, and so on. Yes, I could have saved you the time by simply declaring the agency's response and reception to our investigative report and its unassailable conclusion and the agency's avoidance to do its job as further disgraceful behaviour from a malignant and grossly incompetent agency in a serious betrayal of the nation's history and public trust. And what we offer is simply further illustration of the agency's failure to manage, which along with everything else includes its statutory property listing activities. And after you've read the catalogue of the agency's shame in press reports and articles on the internet, you will not even question or be surprised by my declaration of the agency's incompetence, prejudice, negligence, and its general misbehaviour. Unbelievably, when we petitioned the new chair, Sir Mark Jones, the new broom parachuted in by the Scottish Government to govern the agency during what some press agents were calling a shit show, the new chair simply swept us away as if our concerns and discovery were trivial, unquestionably supporting the agency's previous response to our 4 years of complaints and petitions. As if he was confident the agency acted appropriately at all times, in the midst of the agency's decades-long catastrophic failure and inappropriate behaviour across the full spectrum of its activities. Digger and I were again met with ignorance, negligence and denial, and this time, instead of Digger, my fractious hippie archaeologist partner, who was usually the first to righteous anger, it was me, sharpening the axe to take to the door of Historic Environment Scotland's ivory tower. Instead of sweeping up the agency's mess and leaving it spotless, the new chair was content sweeping the detritus created by Historic Environment Scotland, littering the Scottish landscape with crumbling heritage, failure and discredit under the carpet. It was suggested we forget about the bells, with the agency offering to sponsor discussion between us and the local council about the future of the church, indicating the issue we presented over the last 5 years, including the local council's complete indifference to local history and culture, had either not been properly considered by those that prepped the chair's response, or the new chair was a comedian. The only future for Holywood Church is the recognition of the bell's Knights Templar provenance, and the new chair's glib response only amplifies the issue, which we hope, with the public's help, will bite the establishment so hard on its elitist and condescending arse, it brings it screaming into submission. Scotland deserves far better.